Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 26 of the anime series, Ushio to Tora, and wow, man. Sometimes a show will throw you for a loop, and it'll give you exactly what you needed, which isn't necessarily what you thought you wanted. And, you know, I was somebody who only just got the heads up, thank you to the viewer who gave me the heads up, in the last couple of episodes' time, that there was going to be a season 2 coming in spring of 2016. You know, there's going to be like a couple-month hiatus, and then the show will be back with 13 more episodes to flesh out the rest of the story, presumably. And I hadn't originally known that, so I was becoming worried over the last couple of weeks that, you know, how are they going to, like, ramp up this story to a finale? How are we going to have a penultimate clash between Ushio, Tora, and maybe a whole cast of characters against H.A.M.M.R? How are they going to wrap all that up? And so I was quite concerned. And with the revelation that, in fact, it will be back in spring with 13 more episodes, I then began to sort of change tack and become curious how they were going to, you know, sort of wrap things up for now, just for a little while. And would I be satisfied? Would they be able to put forth a conclusion that was satisfactory? And largely going into this, I felt like, you know, especially knowing over the last couple of episodes that Ushio and Tora were going to be fighting an aspect of H.A.M.M.R, I thought going into this episode that was going to be the crux of my interest. You know, seeing them take this aspect down. You also had the added flair of them trying to save the yokai Baldanders and everything like that, per Asuko, you know, Nakamura's insistence to save this young yokai and everything. And it was very compassionate and compelling, all of that, you know, trying to take down this monstrosity that was souping up, and all the badassery and the quips going back and forth between Ushio and Tora themselves during that whole sequence was awesome. But what really was the most heartening and sort of compelling aspect of the episode for me turned out to be the H.A.M.M.R Institute's, you know, female scientist, Helena, and the dynamic going on between she and, you know, Asuko. Like, just that heartening, empathic nature. Here was a woman who was very cold and dispassionate, very logical, ready to leave with the other two male scientists, you know, when the poison gas was coming into the room and everything. They wanted to save themselves. They were going to tuck tail and run and leave everyone to their own destruction, not venture to try to save anyone. And the words and actions between Asuko, Ushio, and Tora in their trying to be compassionate, trying to be the saving grace of Baldanders and everyone involved, and, you know, going to the utmost power, summoning the most power they could, and working together, working as a team, as a unit, you know, the sort of link between them being something more than companionship and all those kinds of things. Like, I love that we had this very poignant turn of character with this Helena woman. And I found myself very much gravitating toward her. Every time she was on screen, it was like they dedicated so much of the time they had to animate just overly detailing her face. And every time they would show her and they would linger on her and her expressions and just the exquisite detail, all the fine lines all across her face, showing and putting forth years and years of life and living and hardship. And, you know, when she's talking about the son she lost and looking up to what Ushio is doing and wishing her son could have had a life, you know, and a life wherein he could have done something great, something wondrous akin to what Ushio is doing. I was just really drawn to this character, a character I felt was crazy and like enigmatic and very off-putting in the previous episode. To be drawn into her life and to see her make that character turn where she was very much an integral factor in saving the day. And then, you know, of course, she is hit by one of this aspect of H.A.M.M.R's, you know, spiral attacks, whatever you want to call it, which slices up her back. So she knows at that point she's not going to survive this, you know, no matter what happens. And she puts forth the order to the guys, we should self-destruct the facility because that's the only way we're going to bury this aspect. Even after all Ushio and Tora have done to just unleash holy hell on this son of a bitch, it's still, even in pieces, it's kind of like the liquid metal Terminator from T2. You know, it's still trying to come back together and reform and become that much more powerful. So only apparently the fires of an explosion to hear this Helena woman tell it is what's going to quell this once and for all. And that sacrifice, that, you know, all that emotion, all that poignancy between she and Asuko, you know, being so affected by Asuko's unwillingness to leave, and just, you know, the self-sacrifice, the willingness to self-sacrifice on her part, as well as seeing what Ushio and Tora are capable of. Like, I just thought it was absolutely fascinating, especially with her final words when everyone is trying to escape, and it takes, you know, because Ushio has fallen under the power of, you know, or out of the power of the beast spear, and all the hair is gone, and he is passing out because of the gas. Asuko is as well, and even Boltander seems to be affected very poorly by it, and Tora's the only one who's not, so he has to effectively save them. But when she's communicating with those other scientists and putting forth in their vernacular, you know, what exactly she's just experienced, what she's now come to understand. And they're so cold and dispassionate, they reference it like, you know, thank you for imparting this data. Everything is data to be accumulated to them. There is a dispassionate quality where it's just information. You know, as long as you can stay an arm's length away from anyone, as long as you don't make anything personal, you will constantly be almost apathetic, you know, which is what these scientists were. And so it was that much more compelling. And I found the flavor for a pseudo sort of mid-season or, you know, season 1 finale flavor of having all of that emotion, all of that tension, all of that pathos and gravitas in her character put forth was just a pleasant surprise. And, you know, it made it that much more. And that's the constant quality of this series. You can just be introduced to a character, and within just a few scenes, they can mean the world to you, or you can highly relate to them, or you can be moved by their plight. And that's the masterwork of the pacing of this series. And the emphasis on not just the action and the comedy, but actually giving you heartening, relatable characters. And as I say, the most surprising aspect for me was the fact that the last episode, I was like almost ready. I was unclear as to whether or not, you know, these scientists were on the side of good or bad, or, you know, what exactly their motivations were. I mean, I knew what they were doing and why they were doing it, but it was still questionable if they're taking the right tack and approaching it and everything like that. And obviously, the government has to step in and shut down the H.A.M.M.R Institute because they've been working rogue, as we were told last episode. So with all of that in mind, to see this character, you know, become, I don't want to say maternal, but it was an extension of her maternal qualities in relating back to the son she lost, and looking at these younger people, Ushio and Asuko, and seeing the power they could emanate cumulatively, together, acting together. Suddenly she saw a whole new side of things, and it was one of those things where it was, because it was too little too late, because her life was now being extinguished. She had had a full life, but I mean, it's arguable whether she actually lived. For all of her years, you know, it was probably the majority of that was in facilities, in lockdown, studying and, you know, accumulating data. So there wasn't emotion, there wasn't actual living, and, you know, it was just that much more tragic. And I was so drawn into it. I just really thought this was a beautiful soliloquy. As a finale, you know, temporary though it may be, as I say, coming back in a few months with 13 more episodes. But wow. I mean, and I was actually kind of surprised that they tacked on the end, you know, coming next, episode 27, you know, the hint for the next episode, even though it's going to be a little while. It almost leads you to believe, like, hey, it'll be back next week. But yeah, this was just a beautiful episode. It was, the action was palpable, the tension was palpable, at least to me, in thinking, you know, when they're finding out this aspect of H.A.M.M.R itself can soup up, can, like, you know, absorb Tora's electricity power and make itself that much more powerful. It's utilizing all the yokai it has absorbed as well. And they're not sure how they're going to defeat this thing. And even when they do, it's still not done. You know? And to see this woman sacrifice herself out of that equation, after really having just that awareness of heartening humanity brought forth through interacting with Asuka and everything like that. It was just a really great way to go out for now. And thoroughly enjoyed it. Just really thoroughly was riveted and compelled by it. And I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below if you felt the same way watching the episode, if you were even familiar with the fact that it was going to be on hiatus for a couple months and then coming back with a season 2, 13 more episodes in spring 2016, as I say. You know, whatever like that. I mean, anything goes in the comments below. Love it or hate it. Love having that conversation. But yeah, it was just a great way to go out as far as I'm concerned, and I can't wait to see season 2, you know, see where they go from here. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.